Hello, best ever listeners. Welcome to the best real estate investing advice ever show. I'm Patel, and this is Beyond Multifamily, where we look at other aspects of real estate besides multifamily. Today, I'm going to share my story of how I got started in real estate, and we're going to talk about mixed use buildings. It's a story that is really about dumb luck, but it changed the trajectory of my life. It was over 10 years ago. My wife and I were both W 2 employees. We had a sizable tax burden every year. Every April, we'd have to write a decent sized check. And I remember every April, we would talk to our CPA and we would ask, what can we do to minimize taxes? Is there a way we can offset anything and reduce our tax burden? And I'll never forget, my CPA was not even looking at us. He was rummaging through some papers on his desk, just looking down, and he mumbled out, "If you make it, you got to pay it," and just really dismissed that question that we asked him. I didn't buy that. So I thought there had to have been a better way. And the next year or so, we looked at several different options on reducing taxes, some crazy exotic things like captive insurance, offshore trusts. And in the back of my mind, I remember always hearing real estate is a great way to offset taxes. Had no idea how that was possible, didn't know how depreciation works. But I thought, okay, I got to buy some real estate. So, just like any other real estate investor starting out, I get onto the local MLS, and I remember there was an option to search by commercial properties. I figured I'd do that, avoid the residential rat race. And I knew that I would rather have a commercial tenant versus a residential tenant. So I found a mixed use building in a college town. What is mixed use? So, mixed use is typically retail or some commercial, and there's apartments above it. A lot of older towns will have mixed use buildings. They're usually in walkable neighborhoods. Back in the day when they were constructed, that was the hotspot neighborhood. You could see old grocery stores, apartments above it. In older cities, New York, Chicago, there's tons of mixed use buildings. Um, any other older city will have them as well. Cincinnati, Ohio, there's tons of them spread out throughout the city. And why did I pick this mixed use building? Another um, dumb story. But basically, there was a grocery store on the first floor, and there was 4 vacant apartments above that. So I thought to myself, you know what? When the grocery store lease is over, I can run the store, or I put somebody in the store to run that and get an additional revenue stream. So although I set out to find real estate, I thought I hit a home run because now I've got a grocery store and 3 apartments and another source of income. So I put an offer on the building. I think I finally closed on it for around $230,000. And at the time, the financing was quite difficult. And this will make more sense later, but I'm going to share the story. I had 3 banks competing for this loan. So I thought it was 2 local lenders and one of the big banks. So the 2 local lenders I thought would be the best option. They knew the area, they knew it was a college town, and both lenders basically ghosted me. And one of them, when I followed up, I said, "Hey, where are we with this loan?" And they said, "Well, our bank president drove by the property and wants nothing to do with it." The other bank just, they started out saying that they were interested, and they fell off the face of the planet, never would return my calls. So now I have my big bank that I've banked with for 10 plus years, just a typical savings account, checking account. And they were going to underwrite the property, finance it. We had a lot of snags with them. It was a hairy process, but we finally ended up closing that loan. And back to why am I talking about mixed use? So I'm a huge advocate of people exploring commercial real estate. And best ever listeners, if you've listened to me long enough, my definition of commercial is non-residential commercial. I know a lot of the multifamily guys think commercial is 5 units and above. Not think, but that's their definition. So just know when I say commercial, it is non-residential commercial property. Big advocate of commercial because there's currently higher cap rates, in my opinion, much higher returns. And my previous episode talks about why commercial real estate, and it's the previous podcast to this episode here. Mixed use is a great way to transition into commercial real estate. So for a lot of people who are residential investors, whether it's single families, duplexes, quads, multifamily, getting a mixed use building, it will expose you to a lot of the aspects of commercial real estate, but with a safety net. And that safety net is a revenue that you have coming in from the apartments. You know what the rents are going to be, what the expenses are going to be for a typical 4-unit apartment building. When you look at a mixed use building, I want you to underwrite it as if it's only residential. Forget that the commercial spot is there. If it's 3 apartments, 6 apartments, underwrite the property as if it's just apartments. We'll get to the commercial part later. So why mixed use? More reasons. They're under the radar. They're difficult to search for. I've never seen a database in MLS where it has search criteria to search for mixed use. It's either apartments, 1 to 4, 5+, commercial, land, condos. I've never seen mixed use. So a little bit more difficult to find mixed use properties. I'm sure your realtors can help you with that. They're difficult to finance. They don't fall under residential. They don't really fall under commercial, although they are. It's just that weird mix of mixed use, residential and commercial. Lenders just don't like them. It's easy for lenders to underwrite apartments, but the mixed use just brings up a gray area, and often they will be portfolio loans, meaning the lenders are going to have to keep the properties on their books. It's not a Fannie Freddie product that they can sell off. There's very little competition to mixed use buildings. What do I mean by that? A great story. I bought a mixed use building. I've bought a few in the last couple of years. One of them I turned into a restaurant. And there was an existing restaurant there. We basically modernized it, renovated it, and built out a restaurant. The building next door was for sale, a very similar size footprint, mixed use as well. First floor is roughly 3,000 square feet of commercial, and above that is 4 apartments each in the 2 buildings. So the building was for sale, advertised on the MLS for $190,000, and had been on the MLS for probably 5 or 6 months, if not longer. And my partner in the restaurant business kept saying, you should buy this building. We can make an awesome event center tied to the restaurant. I really didn't want to go deeper into the restaurant business. I didn't want to go deeper into apartments or mixed use buildings. I am mostly a commercial investor. So this is not my bread and butter. Nonetheless, I made an offer, 150. They countered at 165 or something, but it wasn't enough for me to pursue it. I let it go. About a month later, I get a call from a residential investor friend of mine, and he says, will you help me underwrite this commercial property? Sure. We get on the phone. He gives me the address, and I said, listen, I know that building. I tried to buy it about a month ago, and we were stalled at around 165 or whatever it was. And he's like, yeah, I want the apartments, but the commercial part scares me. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. So I want the commercial part. I don't want the apartments. Why don't we partner up? And after he gave it some thought, he finally decided, nah, it's not his wheelhouse. He doesn't want to risk buying a commercial property. He just doesn't know enough about it. So when I found out that he wanted no part of it, even partnering with me, I asked him, I said, hey, if this was just 4 apartment units in on this street, this same location, but there was no commercial part of this building there, it was just a standalone 4 unit apartment building, what would the ARV be? And he came back and said, well, probably around 280, 290. And I was blown away. So here we are. You're getting a free commercial property under 4 apartments, and you're not willing to pay what you would for just the 4 apartments. Blew my mind. And I knew there's a real opportunity there, not just with this property, but with educating people all over about mixed use buildings. So nonetheless, I ended up buying the building. Excuse me. I got the building for $150,000, not even the 165. I think they just got tired of it being on the market for so long, bought the building for 150. Now keep in mind, 285, 290 was the ARV coming from a very experienced multifamily person. So in my mind, I'm $100,000+ ahead right when I purchased it. But it's crazy that all these other apartment investors, if there's a duplex, a triplex, a quad anywhere, they're dying for these properties. They're overbidding them. They're buying them at 4 caps. And this one just flew under the radar for 6 months or so. So there's great opportunities out there. In terms of value add, often you will find these mixed use buildings where the apartments are rented, but the commercial part is vacant, or vice versa. The commercial part is rented and the apartments are in dire need of rehab and they're uninhabitable, but rarely do you see them where they're just humming on all cylinders. And if they are, it's not a great deal. There's no value to be added there. So look for those properties that have one aspect of it rented out, either the commercial or the residential. And again, when you underwrite these, underwrite it as if the commercial part isn't even there. So now another question that people ask is, well, listen, I'm a multifamily investor. I'm a residential investor. I'm going to stick to what I focus on. My challenge to you is focus on high returns versus asset classes. So let's assume multifamily keeps getting compressed in terms of cap rate. Are you going to keep buying multifamily, competing with all of these great operators out there? Or is it time to pivot? Mixed use is that perfect pivot where you can start getting commercial experience without you have a safety net there, right? You minimize the risk versus buying just a retail building where there's no apartments. You're at the mercy of the economy, the retail apocalypse, and all these other things that keep people from getting into commercial. So I encourage all of you guys to look at mixed use buildings. Another tough lesson I learned on this property was because it's in a college town, I didn't get into the proper rent cycle, meaning I knew college classes started in September and I had all these apartments ready by July, but I failed to understand that these leases are signed between January and early March. So when my apartments hit the streets, when I had the for rent signs up there was no renters left. All the college kids had their leases in place. So I ended up having to wait until second semester to lease these properties out. So if you do buy in a college town, just know the cycle in your area. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at the Best Ever brand. But again, I implore you guys, look at commercial. Even if you're not serious about it, find some commercial properties in your area and underwrite them. There's other commercial properties where they're newer, class A, and those are very popular today. A lot of municipalities want mixed use buildings in their towns, their walkable suburban downtowns. They want those Class A retail on the first floor, street level, and higher end apartments. We're talking about the older mixed use value add properties. So thank you for tuning in. Best ever listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review. Share the podcast with someone you think can benefit from it. Also, follow us, like us, subscribe, but have a best ever day.